Hey everyone, this is Mitch Blankenspore from MTG Modern Storm.com. This is my second attempt to record a couple matches for you with some Storm. This morning I'm on the East Coast time zone of the United States, so it's about 11 a.m. where I am. I tried to record this. I'm using a Microsoft Surface Pro to record this, and my screen capture, I was using multiple screens, and the first time I tried to do this live, the screen capture program captured the wrong thing, so you didn't see any of the matches. Pretty bummed about it, but we'll make do. We'll go through, and I'll sort of give you my thoughts in the replay mode. Quickly, this is the list that I'm working with. This is a list I played at SCG Columbus last weekend. I went 4-2 and then went home. I was dead for top 8 at that point, and just decided to go home. Lost a Titan Shift in 3. That was really unfortunate. Game 1, Game 2, they had Relic into Damping Sphere. In Game 3, they had Relic into Damping Sphere again, and my 7, 6, and 5 had no lands. Found out that they were playing 4 Relics and 4 Damping Spheres, so they really wanted it. Then rattled off, I was 1-1 at that point, rattled off 3 straight, then lost to Burn. So anyways, this is the list I'm working with. Noxious Survival. I know a lot of people don't play this card anymore. I haven't had a lot of time to test it, and test the deck without it, rather. I know people say it's not necessary, it's a bad card to draw. I do tend to agree with them, but I played a league or two without it, and there were a couple times where I went to cast Gifts and Given and realized that I didn't have Noxious in my 75 anymore. So we're going to keep it there. I also have a 3rd Goblin Electromancer, 7th Mana Bear in over the repeal. There is a time and a place for repeal. I've just found it kind of underwhelming, and I'm going to accept losing to main deck hate like Leyline of Sanctity, Grafdigger's Cage, Damping Sphere. The Grixis Word deck's the only one I'm really worried about. So when I've been playing the deck, I've been going off of a lot of what Caleb Shearer's done with a couple card differences. As I said, so this list is 2 cards off in the main deck. I have the Noxious Survival instead of the Repeal, and I have the 3rd Electromancer instead of the 2nd Remand. A little bit different in the sideboard, too. I haven't liked Spell Pierce as much, so I'm playing the 4th piece of the puzzle instead. So we will get to some of the games. Again, I'm sorry I did this live. It was a lot more fun. I'm sure it'd be a lot more fun for you live, but we'll work the technical difficulties as we go along. If people like this, then I'm sure I can do more in the future. I'd like to stream eventually, but my wife and I bought a house about 2 months ago, and we live kind of in the country, so there's no hardline internet here, so I'm working with like 5 to 7.5 megs, which isn't the best at times. So first matchup, we'll get to game 1 here. See if I can get the replay controls right this time, get our screen capture all figured out. So this hand, we're on the draw, so I decided to keep it. I was a little bit bummed, obviously, to have the Shivering if it only lands a little bit annoying. But you've got your draw step, 2 cards from sleight of hand, another draw step, and 2 more cards. You have 6 cards to see a land, so I kept it. And I Scalding Tarn pass, so I'm like, okay, this could be so many things. I go ahead and cast my sleight of hand here, and we are looking at, obviously we take our 2nd land here, and pass. Try to speed this up a little bit for you. So they shock in Watery Grave. So at this point, I know I'm playing against Grixis Shadow, which is a really bad matchup for this deck. I think I said when I was trying to do it live the first time, this is arguably one of the worst matchups in Modern. They have a quick clock, they have hand disruption, they have stubborn denial. It's a nightmare. Pull the graveyards out for y'all. So they play this, and I'm like, well, turn 2 Angler with stubborn denial is like the nut. against us. It's really bad. I go ahead and play Brawl here. I thought about playing Manamorphose to try to find another land, but if they soft stub that, or I guess hard stub, technically because they have an angler, then it's really bad for us. So I decided to play Brawl. They Thought Scour, and then they will Fatal Push this Brawl, and they have a Death Shadow. So our hand's not looking very good. This is a really good start from them, and we're in some trouble. So I think about playing an Electromancer here for a second, and then second guess myself and play Morphos instead. And then I draw, I believe, a Ritual. So now, this was an interesting part in the game. I was sitting there like, okay, we can play an Electromancer, but if they have Bolt, then we're like really, really dead. If they untap and have Push, we're in big trouble. So at this point, I kind of tell myself that we really need to like find our Empty the Warrens with this Morphos and go off with Goblins. And it seems really unlikely at this point. I'm sure other of you would have maybe a different play here, and that that very well could be the wrong play. If I'd known I was going to draw a Ritual, I think there's a line where you can go Desperate Ritual into Manamorphose into Electromancer, and then cast your Ritual that you draw, and then you have another Manamorphose, and then you can maybe start go off with Gifts and Given, but I didn't know that. And so now we can't do that because we can, Ritual, Manamorphose, Electromancer, Ritual, then all we have is red mana. So I cast the second Manamorphose, and I get really lucky, and lo and behold, we hit Empty the Warrens. So I empty the Warrens for 10 Goblins and pass. And then they bolt themselves, and then Thought Scour, but they bolt themselves. So I'm thinking, gotta have Temur Battle Rage here, 100%. So they attack, and I sit here and I think about, okay, I'm at 12. How do we block here? So we need to put at least 3 in front of Death Shadow and 1 in front of the Angler. That allows us to live at a minimum and leaves us 6 Goblins to kill them on the swing back. The kicker is, if they have Battle Rage, then we can't cast any spells because we have Shivan Reefs. But they hadn't played a land for the turn yet. So if they Battle Raged, which I thought, they have 3 cards, right? So if they Battle Rage, if I block 3 in the Death Shadow, 1 in the Angler, and they Battle Rage, then they Battle Rage, I go to 1, I have 6 Goblins, but then they have to have, their other 2 cards need to be land and a 1-mana removal spell to kill a Goblin, or else they're dead in the swing back. Otherwise, they could just not Battle Rage, take the damage, and if they have a removal spell, then I'm in trouble. So I basically deduced, after thinking about it, tanking for a while, that my avenue to win this game is to block 3 in the Death Shadow, 1 in the Angler, and hope that they don't have removal. Which again could be the wrong line, and that's what happens. And our opponent goes for Battle Rage, and they don't have it, and they scoop. Or sorry, they go for Battle Rage. They realize I'm not dead, and we get game 1. One thing that I said as I queue up the other 2 matches, which you can see we end up losing, is the Grixis Shadow matchup, in my experience, isn't great, but it is largely dependent on the skill of both pilots, particularly the Shadow pilot. Like, playing Grixis Death Shadow is a really hard deck to play. Brandon Dalloway is one of my good friends, and he has a lot of experience with Shadow, and he beats up on Storm all the time. But I know, like, Janice is a Storm pilot from over in Europe, and he has a positive win rate against Grixis Shadow. Now, him and I have talked a little bit, and he kind of concluded that that set of data really is not super conclusive, because him and I think, at least I think, if you play against a average to below average Shadow player, which again, that's the majority of the population that plays Shadow, because Shadow's a really hard deck to play, you can steal games. So here's game 2. Let me show you the sideboard here. I sideboarded. I took out some of my mana bears, took out Noxious, took out a Past in Flames, brought in the Empty the Warrens, brought in Bolts, kind of went the mid-range route. Brought in Dismember. Dismember's an all-star in this matchup. Again, they don't have a Thoughtseize turn 1 or Inquisition, which I'm feeling pretty lucky about. I take the Bolt here and then pass. They pass, so nothing too explosive from our part. I do not cast Brawl there. I know some people might. If they don't play anything, gotta have removal. I mean, I know that Storm has cut all of its bears in the matchup in the past, so there might be an instance where Shadow cuts all of its removal, but I know they have bolts in for sure, because they can bolt themselves to grow their shadows and stuff, so I didn't play Brawl there. They Thought Scour. This is an interesting turn here. They fetch, and they shock, and they tank for a second. And the read that I had was they have Angler in their hand, but they can't play it because then they're going to tap out. That was my read, and they end up passing. So we have a really interesting turn here. I end up not casting the Brawl here, again, thinking that they've had a really reactive hand so far, so I figured at least removal and stub in their hand. It could have been right to, you know, Brawl and Morphos, but then if our Morphos gets stubbed, really not doing a whole lot. So I bottom an island and draw more lands, which isn't great, and I just pass here. Opponent casts an Angler here and leaves up what I'm assuming is Stubborn Denial. And then this is our draw for the turn. So this is one of the more interesting turns in the match. I'm not completely sure if I played it correctly, but I cast Morphos here first. And maybe what I should do is cast Brawl followed by a Morphos. And if they stub it, then I get another Morphos. But I wanted to, my thought process was, I didn't think that mana was going to be our bottleneck on this turn. I figured it was cards. So I ended up trying to, my goal was to disincentivize the opponent from stubbing Morphos because I need the card draw. And we end up drawing a sleight of hand, so I cast a bunch of cantrips here. Again, I cast Morphos. I don't want them to stub this because I need to draw cards. Bottom land, draw a ritual. Play a sleight of hand, keep the Serum Vision. So again, I'm just like cantripping a bunch. And they surgical my Morphos here, which is interesting. So up until this point, we had 42 cards in deck, and we had bottomed like at least 3 or 4. So we were like over a third of the way through our deck, and we hadn't hit a 2 of Grape Shot, a 3 of Empty the Warrens, a 4 of Pieces of the Puzzle, and a 1 of Past in Flames. So we had like 10 hits for an engine to sort of get us going here, and we just never hit it. I think the surgical play on their part's pretty bad at that point. I was honestly more frustrated that we lost the cards at the bottom of our deck, like Maintain our Library Order. So I draw another Brawl, so I just play Brawl. Again, I've got just like all mana in my hand. They push, which was interesting. They left push in the deck. I don't know if that's common or not. And then they Snapcaster and don't hit surgical, which was weird. And they don't attack with Snapcaster. My opponent just put in chat there kind of some punts on their part. But again, I just play Brawl because we have like a million rituals in our hand. Maybe I'm not supposed to play it, but I wanted to block Snapcaster. They have Snap Push here. I respond with Bolt because I don't want to die on the next turn. But I believe that they have Battle Rage and kill us. So that's game 2. So game 3, we are on the play again against Grixis Shadow. And pull up the replay here. So again, I didn't change anything sideboard. This hand isn't great, but I don't like to mulligan against Thoughtseize decks. This has a sleight of hand. This has a Pieces of the Puzzle. And I know it's got a lot of lands, but I decided to keep. I could certainly be open to people that say that this matchup is bad enough that you should mulligan until you have a hand with a cohesive game plan. But my thought was, if I mulligan to 6, and then I have a game plan, and then one Thought Caesar Inquisition rips apart the game plan, what am I doing? So I ended up keeping this hand. Sleight of hand, I keep the Echoing Truth because it's not a land. They have a pretty reactive start here, which is great for us. I could have held up Echoing Truth there, but I don't think there's a reason to. The only thing that punishes me for doing that is if they play a Gourmet Angler on turn 2 without Stubborn Denial. I thought this was interesting. The opponent has 5 cards in graveyard with a fetch land. So they have a line to fetch a land, play Angler with Stubborn Owl backup, and they didn't do that. So my read was their hand definitely cannot contain those 2 cards. Again, sorry if that's a little bit novice for some people, but I like to point it out, just my thought process that was going on throughout the games. Again, I could play Piece of the Puzzle here, but my read was they probably had Stubborn Denial and not Angler, because I think they would have played more likely to play Angler, and I didn't want to get the pieces soft stubbed. Again, could be incorrect of me. Maybe I should jam there, but our hand doesn't have a lot going on other than that, so I elected to keep the pieces in hand. They end up Thought Seizing. Now, here's interesting. They took pieces, not Grape Shot. So what does that tell me? My read was that they did not have Surgical, because I think you would for sure take the Grape Shot in Surgical. So I draw another Ritual, which of course not a good draw. I just say go because I don't got a lot going on. They have no pressure either, so we can wait. Serum Visions. I keep the Piece of the Puzzle on top, and draw another land. And the opponent's down to 9 here, so we have an out to Grape Shot kill. They K command getting back their Angler, so we just bin the Shivan Reef again. Interesting K commands in their deck at this point, and they play Angler, and I guess they had Stub in their hand the whole game, so we're not in a good spot. I Echoing Truth, and they stub my Echoing Truth. So my read was they most likely had another Stubborn Denial in their hand because their graveyard's still chock full. It doesn't. It's not a huge negative for them to just let the Angler go by if they only have 1 stub, if they have some removal in hand. But I cast pieces, don't have anything going on. It gets stubbed, which of course is not great for us. You could Ritual Grape Shot there, but still not enough to kill him, so I didn't. The opponent plays a Liliana of the Veil, which is interesting. So I discard a Ritual here. We're in a pretty rough spot. And I draw pieces. So I think about it for a second. I cast pieces. They don't have Stubborn Denial, so I take Unsubstantiate and Empty the Warrens. They Thought Scoured here first, which is interesting, and then the Veil activation. Now, I sat here and I thought, what's our avenue to victory? We don't really have the mana for like a Grape Shot unsub Grape Shot line, so I actually just bin the Grape Shot and hope that we win via Empty the Warrens. I don't think that's a great plan, but it is what it is. That's just what we have to do at this point. We're behind. So they attack with Angler. I'm down to 8. And then they play a Death Shadow. So the interesting thing was there, I could have unsubbed it end step, but we need the unsub for the Storm count. Unfortunately, they had another threat. My hope was they didn't have another threat, and then I could unsub the Angler and then Ritual, Empty the Warrens for 6 Goblins on an empty board. But the second Shadow is not great for us. Again, I'm kind of priced into this. I bin the Shadow because they have a Delta, and I thought the Shadow was more dangerous. And then it's their turn. They're going to make me, the Serum Visions, make me sack a guy, and then they attack. And I think, so my thought was, if they have Battle Rage, I have to block with at least 3 in order to survive. And unlike Game 1, I think at this point, we are past the point in the game where we can play around Temur Battle Rage. The opponent had one in the graveyard already also, so I thought, if we're playing around Temur Battle Rage, what are we trying to accomplish, right? Because if we play around it and they have it, we block with 3, and then if they just take the damage, then we have 2, and we're still dead to it next turn, right? So and the only thing that we can really draw is like exactly one of Past in Flames in that instance. So I decide that it's better to not play around it, because I don't think we had luxury to, and they had a second Battle Rage and we died. I don't think that makes my play wrong. I'd be curious to hear from others what they think. So game 3 here. Just making sure I didn't do this already. Check that. We already did that. Sorry about that. So we will go to the next match. So let me double check that I did all 3 games here. I did. So sorry about that, folks. We'll go to the second match. This one was really fun. Had some really good gameplay here. 1 second while I get a drink of water. All right, so we get this 7, obviously clear mulligan, and then we get this 6, which isn't a great 6, but it's got lands and spells and a cantrip we're going to keep. I scry to the top, and then I see probably the best card I can see. In this matchup, really hitting land drops is important, and we're going to get to a point where we can bottleneck them on mana. So I'm bummed about mulliganing, but happy to see this matchup. So in the early turns, we're just going to do a bunch of cantripping. Nothing too crazy. Again, we're cantripping into cantrips because we just want to hit lands. And I opt, and I take as a brawl in a mountain. And I just say go, and then my opponent casts a Vendilion Clique. So at this point, in my opinion, this is one of the best cards that blue-white. I'm assuming it's blue-white here because they had double basic island, including a snow-covered island that I just realized right now. But Clique is not a card that I want to see in this instance. It allows them to race, and in a matchup that blue-white doesn't often race, and now that we're only down to 2 grape shots, main deck is more difficult to kill. Lets them look at their hand, lets them look at our hand at instant speed. Excuse me. So all in all, this is a great card for the opponent to play here. And then the interesting thing, which made me even more scared at the time, is the opponent doesn't take anything. So now I'm going, okay, they've got a 3/1 body on the field that I can't kill. They don't take anything. And so that led me to believe that they can beat our hand. So I'm not feeling great here. They attack, and I obviously don't. We have no bolts, and they play Jace here. And I thought playing Jace was actually interesting because they know our hand, and if we're able to hit with our opt and our draw step rituals, then we can potentially kill them with Brawl, Ritual, Morphos, Gifts and Given. I think it's probably still correct on the opponent's part. They Fate Seal us and put to the bottom. I thought about opting before the Fate Seal, and I thought it was interesting. I decided not to because I didn't want them to know what I'm drawing, but I guess they wouldn't know either way. So I'd be curious, for those of you who watch this, if you would opt before the Fate Seal or after there. And then I opt, again, I'm looking for Rituals and Morphos. I didn't hit either one of them. So, and then we draw Noxious, which is an interesting draw. I'm very happy that they don't know about it. And I decide to cast Gifts and Given here while they're tapped out as a sorcery, pretty much. I don't think there's a ton of likelihood that they counter it if I go on the end step, but I felt it was important enough to resolve that I ended up casting it here. Again, could be wrong. That was my thought process, though. So I tank a little bit about what to gifts for. And the pile I end up settling on here is this. Because I have another Gifts Ungiven, my priority here is to make sure we get that click off the table. And if we don't get the click off the table, then we have an avenue to kill our opponent at some point. We also have another Gifts Ungiven to get rituals eventually to fuel our Past in Flames. So this was my pile, open to it being wrong, obviously, but I thought I was happy with any of the cards that my opponent would give me here. Interesting, they gave me Grape Shot and Remand, not the pile I thought they would give. And then they Brainstorm attack me and then pass. Did not playing a land. So I sleight of hand first, and I take Empty the Warren. So now my opponent doesn't know about Empty the Warrens or Noxious in our hand here, and that is pretty valuable. It's valuable for us that they don't know about those things. So I sleight of hand, and then my plan here is to Grape Shot, targeting both with the click. At the click. So even if they have multiple counter spells, we can remand one of them to ensure the click dies. That was my importance at this point. I'm not yet worried about Colonnade because the opponent missed a land. So I want to make sure that we don't die. Again, maybe I'm putting too much priority on killing the click because it's not Jeskai, right? So they don't, at least I don't think it's Jeskai. So the opponent doesn't have reach as much. So maybe I put too much emphasis on that. Also curious to hear your thoughts on that. And they snap op, so not really what I want to see, because if I would have waited on the Grape Shot, then they would have maybe snap opted. I could have killed both their threats. Opponent Brainstorms again. I'm just content to hold up Remand here, and then I take 2 and pass. And then I draw Morphos and I take 2 here. My thought is that they played a Colonnade, so if they draw an untapped land, they can hit us to 4, but that doesn't really matter because then we'll kill them. I wanted to have Gifts Ungiven with Remand up. So that's my play this turn, and I'm going to go for the kill on my following turn. So they, I thought it was interesting that they Fate Sealed me, and the opponent knows I have a second Gifts Ungiven. So I think they definitely need to Brainstorm there. That was a missequence on their part, in my opinion. So I take 2 here, and then I cast Gifts. Now, what am I getting here? I think it's pretty clear that you get Morphos and both rituals. I can see an argument for another Past in Flames. I can see an argument for another Grape Shot, even though our Grape Shot number 1 is already in the yard. So this is the pile that I end up getting here. And it is the 3 that I talked about with a bear. My thought was that, given the context of our hand, mana is going to be the constraint here. So I decide to do this pile. And the opponent gives me, I actually think this replay probably messed up because I thought they gave me the Electromancer instead. So we'll see if this goes forward or not. So I cast Baral here, and then I cast Morphos. The opponent cast Path. So I could Remand Path, that doesn't really do anything. I could Remand Morphos, but again, I need the mana. So I Morphos again. And now the opponent cast a Cryptic Command. So they are tapped out now, which is great for us. So I want to make sure this replay doesn't freeze on us. No Gifts Ungiven can do some different things. But technically in the game, I believe the opponent gave me Manamorphose and Goblin Electromancer, not Manamorphose and Ritual. So I actually don't have this Ritual in my hand. Again, sorry folks, I'll make sure I work through technical difficulties here. But what my line ends up being here is, again, assume that this Desperate Ritual is an Electromancer, because that's actually what happened in the game. I remand the Cryptic Command, so I get a loot out of Baral. So again, I have Electromancer, Baral, and then another Electromancer, because that's what happened. A Noxious Viable and Empty the Warrens. and then I absolutely loot. I hit a land. I haven't put a land this turn, but that's obviously a tap land, so I bin that. And then I count, and I go, okay, I'm going to have 2 mana from Morphos, another 2 mana from Morphos. That's 4, and then 5 from the Shivan Reef, and then I have this Past in Flames here in my graveyard that I need to flash back to win. So what I end up doing is I Noxious Revival a Pyretic Ritual to the top of my deck, and then I draw it with the Morphos. Cool tricks with Noxious Revival here. So I Noxious Revival the Ritual. It's actually not the Goblin Electromancer. Again, sorry, the replay's messing up here. So I Noxious Revival the Ritual, then I let the Metamorphose resolve, first one. I draw the Ritual, I cast the Ritual, then the Passion Flames resolves, I go get a land, which is meaningless. Then the Metamorphose, second Metamorphose resolves, and what I end up with is I end up with 7 mana in my pool, and then I just play a Baral, flashback Passion Flames for 4 with 1 floating, and go through the loop again and kill them. So that's what ends up happening. See if this replay. So again, this Electromancer, something went funky here. That's actually a Ritual, but I end up having enough to flashback Passion Flames and kill them here. And again, this is where the replay freezes. Again, I apologize for that. Bummer that the first try through didn't work with my screen capture, but as you can see the line, it was Noxiousing the Ritual to get 7 mana in my pool, so after the path resolved, I could play a Mana Bearer and then flashback Passing Flames with 1 mana floating, go through the loop again and kill them. So that was game 1. So now on to game 2 here. And this was a really cool game. This set against blue-white was awesome, but this game, oh man, they're not going to let me replay it. Bummer. Well, I'll see if I can get that at some point in the future. Let me try this once here. Let me back out of this once and see if I can go back in here and do this replay, or if they're all jacked up. So they're all jacked up. Let me try to close Magic Online here and try one more time. I really like to get that second replay in there because that was an awesome game. Nope. All right, let me close Magic Online here and load it up again and see if we can't